As part of the hiCraft project, this film details one of the craft commissions with visual artist and maker Nicola Naismith, who collaborated with Jayne Wallace, a researcher, maker, and a member of the hiCraft project team. Nicola and Jayne had originally met at a craft conference in Aberdeen in 2004, and although they hadn't seen each other since, they have remained friends and had corresponded with one another over the years. They wanted to use this opportunity to explore the sharing of data with one another, to think through making about what was shared, where the gaps were, and how they understood things about one another through this process. Fitbits became the object through which data was captured, and each of them shared different facets of their data with the other, supplemented by things like photographs, notes, and a dream journal. Outcomes were different forms of embroidery that critiqued but also revealed ways in which connected things that capture our data could support our well-being in more diverse and human ways.
My name is Nicola Naismith and I'm a visual artist and maker. I like to make objects and I'm really interested in environments, and that's usually the starting point for the work. I originally trained in craft design and then moved into textile culture and then through that into social practice. So my work is subject-led, so work environments, work processes and interactions, and I use a range of materials which are most appropriate to the topic. So I always use drawing and mapping to think about topics. I often use found objects, which are deconstructed and then reconstructed, and I document the process of that. And I think the pulling apart and the reconstruction always makes me think about my own labour, but also the labour of the person who made the object that I'm dismantling. I had a Fitbit. I think I got it in lockdown, and I hold my wrist because that's the wrist I had it on. And I used it because I was just spending hours at my desk. The whole rhythm of working in different spaces had just been reduced to working at a desk. So I got one to help to remind me to get up to do the 250 steps or whatever it is that it recommends per hour. And I think I wore it for about a year, and it kind of worked, and it did kind of spur me on to get out for more walks. And then the strap broke, and then so I fixed the strap with an elastoplast, which I could never get the Fitbit wet because then the plaster would get wet, and I couldn't work out how to mend it, and there was no way for me to mend it because it was kind of like a silicone rubber material. And then I kind of looked at buying another one, and I got bored of the thought of having to buy another one and this kind of endless cycle of consumerism. So kind of coming at it again from a different position of thinking about the data contained within it for this project was really caught my imagination, and the idea that we would swap data. When you look in the Fitbit app, every day is the same. Every set of data is presented in the same way, using the same method or the same kind of visuals, same colours, all of that kind of stuff. Because I guess that's the biggest thing for me with the Internet of Things. I don't really have many things that connect to the cloud because I don't want to share my data. And the reason I don't want to share it is because I don't want people to try and sell me stuff or subscriptions or upgrades and all of that. So I tend to kind of back away from it. But for us to use our data, for us to gift our data to each other with no consumerism kind of tag to it, or no upselling or annoyingness, I guess, was really refreshing and really enjoyable. Taking the Fitbit data, into something that can be made helps to cement its significance. So it stops being kind of like one of the crowd of days, one of a number of days, to a day. So this is my own data. This one's called prioritization, which was a day that I think I was just sick of work and being at the computer. So I took myself to the allotment and I drew some elements, photographed myself when I was there. And quite often I document the allotment over time and then combined it with the Fitbit data, some of the Fitbit data. So this is Onion Day. So taking in some of the Fitbit app graphics and then combining it with the object. When you've done 250 steps in an hour, it's a different colour. And then these are when I didn't even manage to do 250 steps. And normally the aim is to get all of them the same colour and to achieve the goal and to get the star. But actually for me, on the day, my first day outside and going to the allotment and harvesting these onions that I planted in October, and this was July or August, actually managing to get 3 zone hours was really quite an achievement.
Often I find, especially with digital things, design tries to smooth human experience so it can design something for it. And you're on a hiding to nowhere because we're complicated, messy beings. And our relationships with each other and ourselves are.
Yeah.
And craft often just makes things that fit into the nooks and crannies of that messiness rather than trying to smooth out what it is, what experience is. And this picks up on that overlaying, you know, even how you're even talking about multiple layers of different narratives and stories and information. It's not about somebody just understanding the data. It's somebody being within it and putting it in a mixture with all the other things going on. It's interesting to see, for me, kind of what my body was doing, how it was coping, if I am actually getting good sleep, and when it shows you when you're in REM, kind of what was going on there.
So this is actually something that came right at the end, and it's called 3 sleeps, and it's 3 of your sleeps.
Of mine?
Yeah. So it's 3 of your sleeps.
I wondered if they were 3 of your naps.
No,
it's
they could have been, but they are 3 of your sleeps. And even in the process of doing that, I experimented. The bottom set I did really carefully, and the second set I got a little bit more lackadaisical, and the third one I just did really super quickly. And
okay, I can see the quality of line change.
It does change. And just thinking about that slippage, which is something I'm always really interested in when you translate between one source and another, and how that could lend itself to some kind of quilting process or some kind of textile.
And I was thinking about these very structured ways and how each one can have its own kind of structured character. And this one here is Penrose tessellation, which is how you can tessellate with the series of objects without it repeating. So that's where that one came from. That was via Justin, who's done some ceramic work using Penrose tiling before, and thinking about it in relation to black work. I just felt like something of the computer about this way of stitching.
And there's something that's in yours which I don't see in mine, which is this depth, the overworking and overworking and overworking, whereas mine's fairly flat. So it would be interesting to think about building up surfaces over time. So if I kept going with that piece of work, how would it look? What might happen in that process?
And Onion Day.
Yeah.
So even though we hadn't talked about that, we've both kind of gravitated towards the chair was the main thing. And the onions, and then 2 parts in the dream. And I was trying to think of what it means when our other comes together, the other things that were going on.
Because I didn't represent the chair in my day, but it's a really important part of it, because I had to sit down to harvest the onions because I couldn't stand up because I was too tired. So yeah, that was a really important feature, which I didn't actually pick out in mine, but you picked it out here, so that's really lovely. There's something for me about the messiness of life, of work, of caring responsibilities, of admin and bureaucracy and all of those kind of things, and how this sewing process gives that moment of flow and control, but also challenge. And it can be exciting and it can be frustrating, but it's because it's you and the needle and thread and the fabric and the hoop, you know, that keeps the tension. It's low techness, is its sophistication. And it's, for me, it's just so enjoyable. It's just so restorative. And I think sometimes we can forget about, it's okay to do something that's restorative, that's not goal orientated. But it's almost like the design is the starting point to then take on a journey, or to ignore. I guess that's the thing. And then thinking about how these could be kits for people, so bespoke sewing kits that would allow people to stitch their own day, and they could follow it kind of exactly in a way, or go off piste, if you like. So instead of somebody submitting their data to me, or somebody who might put it together, they could print out aspects of their data and overlay it. So thinking about how they might come into a space with some patterns, maybe it might just be around pattern, but thinking about this line. I looked at the start point and the end point of your data, and then I mapped that on a clock. So it starts at 11 and it finishes at 8. So it's almost like bending this, so turning things and moving them around. So in some ways, this is the important bit, because what it looks like doesn't matter. It's the process of the sewing that's the most important bit. And I put them together as kits, and I made the tin, and because I wanted them to be lovely and to embody that gift, and for it to be a gift, and for it to have a use way beyond when the sewing's done. It may become the sewing tin, or it might just become a tin that has, I don't know, shoelaces in it or whatever, but it will always be, I would hope, something special to that person. And that, so there's those people who maybe don't have much care in their life, or they don't receive much care. Maybe they are carers, maybe they're the ones that give the care. I think there's something really lovely about taking care of someone's data and the supplementary information they may give, or helping them to make their own design, and then everything about it having quality. So it's not cheap and cheerful, it's got quality. You're important in the circumstances that you've got. And I think that really helps with respite when you feel special.